All right, we're ready to get started.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Paige Fairbanks-Gunn, and I work for Kelch Senior Communities. And I have my partner in crime here, Pam Ostrowski, and she's the CEO and founder of It's Not That Simple. She is the author of It's Not That Simple, helping families navigate through their Alzheimer's journey. And she is also the owner of Alzheimer's Family Consulting. So we welcome you here today. Pam, go ahead.
Thanks. And one thing that Paige didn't mention about Kelch Communities is that there's 34 of them throughout the United States, different.
We have 40.
You guys are up to 40 now. Yeah.
40 communities. Yep. 8 states.
Yeah. So that goes to show you guys that we're seeing an increase in need across the country for memory care, and Kelch also has some assisted living and some independent living. But you guys know I am very much a sooner is smarter philosophy as far as getting someone in and acclimated to the environment before they start to show issues with cognitive capabilities. And I say cognitive capabilities before we get started with our questions from our caregivers, because a lot of people generalize and say, oh, mom has memory loss, she has dementia. Memory loss is only one symptom of dementia. Dementia is an overarching condition, and there are several diseases underneath that dementia umbrella, such as Alzheimer's, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia. So my dad had vascular dementia, my mom had Alzheimer's. So double whammy for us. But mom lived at Rock Creek in Surprise, Arizona, which is a Kelch community. And we got the best care there. And I always felt safe leaving mom to go on vacation or to head out to a business trip, because I knew that the caregivers were trained. The nursing staff knew what to do if there was anything that happened. And it was like a family, that's the difference, is you want to look for a community that feels like family and not just a job, right? Where they're just showing up and they're doing their job. So that to me is one of the reasons why I really enjoy the opportunity that Kelch gives us each month to have this conversation. And so we labeled this conversation Dementia Q&A, questions and answers, because we figured you guys would have questions. And sure enough, I love you guys for this. You know who you are. But in my email, I asked, what questions do you have? And you responded. Yay! So your questions are in today's webinar. So just wanted to make sure that you knew that. So with that, Paige, are you ready for our first question from our caregiver?
Yes.
All right. So first question, how do I deal with my family visiting from out of state? I feel they do too much with my mom, and then when they leave, she's fatigued, and then it causes her memory to worsen. So she gets depressed. So, we see this a lot where families swoop in. So Paige, since you see a lot more families than I do, I just see them on a one-on-one basis. What do you see happening overall when families come to visit, and what's the end result to those poor people when everyone leaves and all of a sudden it's quiet?
Right. And this does happen often, but I think we have to be mindful of understanding how many people are coming into town. It can be very overstimulating for them. And how do we need to set a schedule of the visitation, really strategically plan out the visitation and the outings and or visits, and how many people, and set boundaries. Maybe everyday visiting is not a good idea. Because if you're starting to see, decrease in her memory loss and feeling depressed, that is a key indicator that it's too much stimulation for her. So, making sure that the family is spreading out the visits, and maybe just short little tidbits, an hour here, an hour there, not all day long, maybe not every day, because it can become very overwhelming. And I will tell you, the reason that their memory starts to fail a little bit more is because they are trying to be the best that they can be when you are there.
They're exhausted.
They're exhausted mentally. So that part it's just too overstimulating for them, and they're trying to be the best they can be.
Yep, you're absolutely right. It's and I know there's a few people here who have seen this happen with their loved ones, where they just turn it on, strangers, people they haven't seen, and they may be strangers to them, by the way, because they might not
Right.
recognize them. So that's stressful. So it's like, put on a happy face and just, you know, answer, do you grab your top 12 responses? Oh, I'm fine. How are you? And, you know, so that I totally agree with you on that. And it's overstimulating, it's exhausting, which again is why the memory and just the ability. So basically they decline right afterwards. And one of the things that, and you mentioned the B word, boundaries. And, you know, we as functioning, cognitively capable people have difficulties establishing boundaries. So it's important for us to set expectations with our family, sit everybody down and say, look, I know mom may appear like she's just fine or she's doing okay, but frankly, this is going to be very exhausting. And you gave some excellent tips on, you know, breaking up the visits. And then also my typical go-to response is no visit should be longer than an hour to an hour and a half, especially when there's multiple people there. Yep. And let's be honest, if your families are visiting memory care, sometimes that's really hard on the family too, to see other people at various stages of the condition, whatever type of dementia it might be. And so it's important that you have other things for them to do. And for you to also, and we talked about this too, that this was your idea, Paige, is to make sure that there's activities for that person or stimulation for that person after everyone leaves. Because honestly, think about Christmas. You get I love Christmas. And we only have like 3.5 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas this year. And so I've got to cram it all in. And, you know, there's Christmas trees and there's music and there's parties and there's this and there's that. And then everybody gets really depressed on December 26th because it's over. And the same thing happens with someone with cognitive impairment. And in addition to that, you know, they might just feel like, well, what happened to those people that were visiting me, and why is there no one here now? And so make sure that you let the community know. So Paige, what would be a good way who would they talk to? Would it be caregivers? Would it be the director of nursing? Who would someone who's asked this question, who would they go to within senior living or memory care to say, hey, all the family's leaving today. It's going to get really quiet. Can you please make sure that mom has some things to do for the next few days to kind of help her pick up her mood?
Yep. It would be the director of nursing. And if the director of nursing is not available, then the executive director. And what they'll do is they'll get the active living director involved, and you could go directly to the activity director, but usually they're always on the floor. They're very busy. And so it's hard to kind of get some one-on-one time with them. But yeah, I would start with the nursing director. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
And be aware and mindful of, you know, the visits are going to end, and, you know, we need to make sure that we're continuing with some stimulating activities and things for her to do.
Yep, absolutely. So I love that. Okay, what's our next one, Paige? What's the next tough question we have?
All right, number 2, it says, I would love some strategies people use to get a parent with dementia to take a shower. I know it's so common for them not to want to have to take a shower, and that is the case with my dad. We've tried to do all the recommended accommodations, such as a shower, grab bars, is it warm, and is there a heater, etc. He just doesn't want to take a shower and makes all sorts of excuses. We see this a lot.
Oh my gosh. It's either the shower or brushing their teeth, right? Those to me are number 1 and 1A in the types of questions that I get with my one-on-one clients. So some of them are, I would say I would handle brushing my teeth a little bit differently than the shower, because for brushing your teeth, I suggest doing it with them. Get out your toothbrush, get out their toothbrush, because it is so important. Mimicking is so important. So even if it's something like eating, you know, you eat, they eat. They're looking for cues because they don't necessarily are not necessarily able to connect the two things of pick up a fork. And then it's a complex task, by the way. Brushing your teeth, taking a shower, and eating are all things that you have to do in multiple steps. We don't think about them, but as your brain gets more cloudy, whether it's with Alzheimer's or with any other type of dementia, it really does affect their ability to do basic tasks. So for the shower, it sounds to me like your dad may be beyond the typical things to do for a shower environment for a loved one with dementia or an aging loved one who needs assistance. So if your dad is beyond that stage, two things. One is make sure that you're not pushing him to take a shower on a daily basis, right? So we're talking frequency here. So twice a week. Don't make it a big deal, you know, and then the next thing would be, I always say, look, you don't know what's going on inside of their head. So when they get in the shower, it could be scary. They might not know the difference between soap, hand soap, or body soap and shampoo. They might have stung their eyes. You just don't know what's happened in that shower. And so there's a reason why he doesn't want to do it. And he can mask that with anger, frustration, all those different icky emotions that we get puzzled by. So give him, you know, in my opinion, give him a washcloth and a bar of soap. And it needs to be a bar of soap, not the liquid soap, because that looks like shampoo, right? So you really have to break it down to the basics. A bar of soap and a washcloth. And then if you have a professional caregiver, and Paige, I'd love for you to talk more about this, professional caregivers have better results than family members. And spouses have the worst track record for getting their spouse to take a shower. So if your mom is trying to get your dad to take a shower, I don't think you stand a chance. I hate to say that, but this is when you start calling in professionals, because nobody wants to look stupid, and that's the way they feel. Nobody wants to look stupid or incompetent or incapable in front of a loved one, especially someone they've spent decades of their lives with. So Paige, can you talk a bit about some of the experiences you've seen where, you know, your staff, the caregivers at one of the memory care communities has better luck?
Oh, yes. This is a very common theme of not wanting to take a shower. And first of all, I want to, you know, disclose that it's very scary to them. And again, it's another anxiety, activity response for them, because they feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. How do I do this? So I think, you know, with our caregivers, first of all, they don't want to be with their loved one that they've been with for years, because it's an embarrassing situation for them, and they want to make sure that they're the best that they can be. They are much better with strangers. It sounds odd, but they are. And, you know, being able to let them know that it's okay to receive help and that we're going to help you with this. Also, too, is who says you have to take a shower? Do you have to actually take a shower? You can get clean without a shower. So you could also do, you know, let's start with wipes. Let's clean certain parts of your areas of body. The shower is very scary to them. And also the water hitting them in the face is extremely scary for them. So making sure that you have, you know, everything all set up. I saw that, you know, you have everything set up. It's warm. There's all of that, but maybe having the bathtub all filled and just setting them in the bathtub, and there's no shower and loud noise going on and no shower popping in their face. It's very scary for them. And two, again, it goes back to our caregivers are so kind and gentle, and you got to make sure you have everything ready to go. But I will tell you too, that oftentimes first of all, it's all in the approach. And number two, maybe if that person doesn't work well with this one, then we use another person.
Yep, absolutely. So
till we get it right.
And that's the beauty of a care community, in my opinion. What worked with Mom was that, if you're absolutely right, if one particular caregiver wasn't someone that she, you know, kind of resonated with, then Davina would always come in and say, Loretta, let's start with your hands. And she would start to take the washcloth and do her hands and then go up her arm, as opposed to just like, okay, go, take a shower. And the other thing is that we forget as family members is that the word shower may mean nothing and bath may mean nothing. So it's, let's get cleaned up. You can even say, Pewy Cinco,
Yeah.
and then lift his arm and woo, and then hand him the bar soap and the washcloth, and or just start doing it for him, and see how he responds to that. There's a ton of different ways to do this. And ultimately, one of the things that's really nice is that your caregivers have training on how to do it. They know if it's not working for them, they'll call in someone else. So there's a lot of ways to mix it up like that while the person is
Sometimes it's a team effort.
undressed.
Sometimes it's
right?
a team
That's
effort.
the other thing. You think about this, they're getting undressed, and that's the most private part of things. And so ultimately, different things are going to work for different people. This is just, it's endemic to the disease and the condition, is that what works for me and works for you may not work for, the other people on the call. That's why we have so many different answers. So there you have it. Okay, good answer. Okay, Paige, this one's for you.
Okay.
My dad is resisting moving my mom into memory care. What are some strategies for persuading him that she'd get better care there? So this sounds to me like it's more about talking to dad in advance, as opposed to, walking in the door and then talking with the memory care. So what do you hear?
Yeah, some strategies. Well, first and foremost, I always tell family members, and especially spouses, it's very difficult with spouses, difficult for children too, but when you've had your loved one, and for better or for worse, I'm not going to put you anywhere. You are the best person for your loved one. You know them best. However, you're not the expert. And you are the expert of your person, but you're not an expert of the condition and what is going on with their limitations. And we are. That's where, and we also, as the caregiver, you're on 36 hours a day, I call it. We're on a new, well-rested staff member coming on every 8 hours. Okay, we have shifts of new people to be able to help with that. And it's just, we understand the disease process, and you can get the rest, because how good are you when you are on 36 hours a day? And it takes a village to take care of somebody. It really does.
It does.
It just kind of taking back and relying on the experts and giving us the trust us enough that it will be a transition. There's always a transitional period, but just know that we live and breathe this all day long, and with multiple different people and multiple different types of dementia. So we get pretty savvy on how to get things done and how to care for them throughout the day, all day long.
And I think that's an excellent way to address the question of, why would I trust those people? Because that ultimately, like just with my dad, he did not want mom to move into memory care because he felt that they couldn't take care of her, and that, they didn't know what they were doing. And, he's a retired lieutenant colonel, so he knew everything.
And that's okay. Let him know everything.
Yeah,
he knows
right.
everything.
Exactly. But the problem is, for him, his issue was mom wasn't going to take her medications if he told her to do it. So to help this person with positioning it with their father, first of all, have the conversations in snippets, small bites. So you're having lunch and you say, Dad, you look really tired. And he will say, let him respond, oh, well, I was up all night with your mother. This is going to make you sick. And a lot of, especially men I've seen, don't want to move their wife or spouse into memory care because they feel like they can take better care of them, and that that's not what she would want. And that's like, no, but it's what she needs. because I remember there was one gentleman who, his wife would only eat watermelon and jello, so that's all he fed her, and she dropped like 30 pounds in a very short period of time. And she was dehydrated, and she was starving, basically, because he didn't know how to get her to eat, and he didn't know to have her model what he was doing. So he didn't eat with her. He'd put a plate down in front of her because he wasn't going to eat the same thing or at the same time. And so the disease needs, to have others around that are like them in order to help them. And I think so that's another aspect, isn't just that the professional caregivers and they're well trained and they've got so many different experiences that they can tap into those. But in addition to that, you've got someone who's with their cohort, for lack of a better word, with their people. And so having lots of people, caregivers around to assist with that should reassure, your dad about, look, this is going to take you out before it takes her out at the rate you're going. And if you're sick, you can't go and visit her. If you are sick and you pass away, that's not good either. So the stresses of caregiving are deadly. And I don't think we say that enough. And so having those little conversations, especially catching him when he is tired. And I know that sounds like the opposite of what you'd want to do, but it's catching him when he's vulnerable to say, look, this is not good. Do you think it's good? Is it good for mom? Is it good for you? And say those things out of kindness and compassion, not you should do this, dad. You need to do this, dad. It's not about you taking over their lives. It's about you being kind and empathetic and pointing out health degradation, weight loss, or sometimes weight gain, lack of medication management. That scares the heck out of me.
Yes.
When like mom wouldn't take her medication. And so, dad's like, well, I don't know what to do. It's like, we're going to get a professional caregiver and then she will take it. And mom did. She loved the girls. And, she was just, and that's what they called them, is the girls. And she didn't have any issue, but she did not want her husband telling her what to do, which is a whole other dynamic that we as adult children aren't even aware of in some cases. So good stuff.
And two, family members too they're not the expert unless they're a physician or they're a pharmacist. They're not the experts in medication.
Exactly.
So
and
being in a community, in our communities and most communities, you have a pharmacy that does, pharmacy reviews on a monthly basis. They're checking to see, okay, mom's been on this med for a long time. Do we really need to be on that? Those types of things, and really monitoring, do they really need to be on these medications? Because as we all know, what do we watch on TV? It's a commercial for medication. And do we need to be on all these medications? So less is more. We like to not have so many medications because they counteract with everything.
Well, and I have another example of that. Of just this past week, I was talking with a client and I said, what medications is he taking? And she went through the list. And I said, why is he on that? I said, he has dementia, so it doesn't make sense to be on that medication. She's like, she had said, well, I said, why is he going to the doctor? Is there a problem? Or is he, because doing regular checkups is really kind of a moot point at this point. And she said, oh, well, we have to, because of the type of medication he's on, we have to see the doctor quarterly. And I said, but did you ask the doctor why he's on that medication? She said, no. And so we as caregivers don't ask the right questions. And I will tell you, personal opinion, most of the medical profession just keeps feeding you drugs. And they're like, okay, well, this is what you used to take. We're just going to keep, you seem to be fine. And it's like, well, how do you know? How do you know that one medication isn't exacerbating his dementia symptoms? Yeah, so it's very frustrating. And so to me, she asked, well, should I go to his PCP or his neurologist? And I said, go to the neurologist and ask these questions, because the neurologist knows how medications affect the brain function. A PCP most likely does not. They're looking at behaviors. Your least favorite word, I know.
It is. You got to advocate for yourself and ask why.
Yeah. At the very least, right? Okay, what's our next question?
Okay.
You can
Pam,
skip the
what?
background story if you want, number 5.
Okay. So we're going to do number 4. What are the top concerns families have when they visit a memory care community? So for me, since I work in memory care community, when people come to our door and they are visiting a community for the first time or a couple different times, or other families are coming, usually they're at our door, number one, because there's incontinence going on and they need help. There's things that they're struggling with and they can't care for their loved one and they need to seek help. But a lot of their concerns are they want to know what the programming is all about, how educated and experienced is our staff, how long have they been there, how much training we have. They also want to know what our state survey looks like. All of the communities are surveyed. All of the community surveys are available to you online on the state health department. And those are real good questions that families bring to us at the table. And when families are reluctant to place someone, we have in all of our communities, we have family testimonies. We have family members willing and able and available for phone calls for people, prospects that are looking. Hey, I have a list of 4 families you're more than welcome to reach out to. That will help instill a little bit of credibility and trust in the beginning, because it is scary. But those are some of the concerns that families bring to us.
Yeah, so when I was looking,
You've lived it, so you know.
I lived it a lot.
Yeah.
So I'll be very candid with this audience in that I did not find placement helpful, because like a place for mom or places that sound like that, they just gave me a list and said, here's what their state record is, go tour them and see what you think. So it's very important for you to get local expertise and, local people who this is what they do for their living in that town that you have your loved one, because then they're going to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. But so I had to do my own research. And then on top of that, what I was really looking for, and what Dad was looking for too, was 24/7 nursing. And Kelch was the only one that had that at the time. And the reason why we wanted it was he was afraid if something happened to her, there wouldn't be a medical expert on site. And, some of the places have LPNs. That's not the same as an RN. Having access to a physician 24/7, that's also really important. The whole concept of taking somebody with dementia to the doctor's office is not a good one, in my opinion. You're taking them out of their familiar, safe environment, and you're throwing them into the world. And whether it's the sound of the traffic, the headlights, whatever it might be, it's too much stimulation and they will not be in good shape by the time you get to the doctor's office. So for us, it was, what kind of medical care do you have in-house? How does mom get to stay where she's at and have everybody come to her? So I used to call her a princess because everybody would come to her. And Dad loved that idea because, that was the way she should be treated. But it's safer for them. It's a calmer experience. Doctors who work in palliative care, you don't have to have a medical issue. Palliative care is ongoing check-ins just to see how everything's going. And palliative care is usually, those are your doctors who have calm voices and who have an excellent bedside manner. And, they're not so clinical and detached. And so they're in that field because they love seniors and they want to help them. And so to us, that was our number one thing. To me, givens for concerns would be if the place doesn't smell good. If you see everybody sleeping in their wheelchairs up against the wall, that's not a good sign either. Believe me, I've seen this stuff. So that's why I was like, nope. watching them do activities. Did they seem happy? I mean, there's certain things that you'll see that you don't want to see, you know, when people progress in the disease, sometimes they get angry or frustrated. But in general, if they're awake and alert and active, that's the type of environment you want. And another one that I didn't want to see was a family member, a resident sitting in their room watching TV. That is another Kelch thing, right? No TVs in the rooms.
TVs,
And
we do encourage TVs.
yeah, and because they will isolate, and the worst thing they can do for keeping their cognitive capability is stimulation. And stimulation doesn't have to be talking with other people. It can be sitting in the activities room, listening to how everybody else is interacting, eating ice cream because it smells and you taste it. And that was Mom's favorite thing, was hot fudge sundaes over at Rock Creek. And so it's those experiences. So no TVs in the room. And also they're not allowed to stay in their room and just isolate. So those are things that it's a very structured environment. And some people may push against that and say, well, they wouldn't like that. And it's like, yeah, but you don't know the person anymore. This is who they are becoming. And we have to help shape the best life possible for them. And a lot of that includes structure. And that's my opinion. I know that I've seen it work because Mom was so funny. So when she went to Rock Creek, she was at a place where she was pretty much comatose before that, not very engaged. And we moved her to Rock Creek. And the first thing that the executive director said is, I'm going to get the activities director and we're going to take her to the back room while you unpack her stuff. And I said, oh, well, she's not going to do any activities. And the activities director came up and said, oh, we're painting birdhouses. And I said, oh, that Mom doesn't paint and Mom's not going to do that. And so, you know where this is going. She made a liar out of me. I came back from unpacking her stuff, went into the activities room. I still have the picture. This is 12 years ago. I still have the picture where she's painting the birdhouse and the activities director is squatted down next to her, helping her, but she was holding the paintbrush all on her own, painting this birdhouse. And I was like, you did that on purpose, didn't you? Go ahead, make a liar out of me.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Just to show you that some of the concerns that we have are for the person they used to be. And not for who they are becoming. And they are evolving and they're becoming a different person. And you get to be part of that journey. If you look at it like, oh, I've lost my mom. No, she's still in there. She just expresses differently. And I think that when this question about, you know, what are the concerns, I try to encourage people to look at this journey differently. So yeah, I think that's a really important part of this whole thing. Okay, time to move on to another question. And if you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat for us. So this question comes down to, there's a lot of detail to it, but basically, our mom is having a difficult time accepting that she has dementia. The dad needs help with taking care of his medical situation. And she's getting upset because the kids are trying to help with weekly chores, like taking their clothes, you know, getting them washed, that kind of thing. And so basically, Mom and Dad are trying to function without help. And now they're starting to get some help with assisted living. But the question is, do you have any suggestions on how we should approach Mom when we try to help her? And are there certain phrases or ways in which to respond that would help her accept our help?
Okay. Well, we kind of talked about this yesterday when we looked at this, and what this tells me when I look at this scenario here is Mom is extremely stressed out. She's well into her dementia journey. These chores need to be either eliminated, she needs to be removed from these chores, and there needs to be professional help, first of all, that needs to be brought in. And it probably needs to not be family that's trying to do this. It needs to be a different individual. Because families, people that have dementia and their loved ones, the ones that they love the most and the ones that they are the closest to, are going to push back the most with you. So again, bringing in a third party, somebody different, somebody, a professional to come in and help with these things. But these are things that apparently, you know, mom and dad are stressing about. And these are real life things that they're trying to have. They're still trying to have their responsibilities when they don't have, they've lost grip with being able to be responsible with these responsibilities. So pulling them out of that, you doing this stuff behind the scenes, but getting mom in an engagement. You know, is mom in an assisted living? Is she maybe going to an adult daycare community to where she can be going in and being engaged and going to a painting class or a music session, and she can not think about these things and pull those stressors away while you're behind the scenes doing all this stuff. And then she comes home and she doesn't have to fret about it.
Exactly. That is such a good point. I sensed that too in this question is, what are mom and dad doing besides sitting at home?
Stressing about this.
And stressing about chores and things like that. Secondly, if you are in assisted living, somebody else can do this.
Get the staff involved.
You don't need to be doing their laundry. And part of it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where, and what you just mentioned again, is that parents would not expect you as an adult child to do their laundry. It is demeaning. It shows that, makes them feel like they can't, that they're incapable. Now, granted, they probably are, but it's how they feel. The last thing people lose in the dementia journey is their emotions. And so the more you try to take over, the more resistance, because to them it's disrespectful. You're treating them like children. You know, there's all those different things. And granted, we can't really glean from this question where that relationship is, but stop trying to help them and instead bring in professional help. If the budget is the issue, then turn around and, you know, do something like what you said, go to an activity center that's specific for dementia, you know, and have them get engaged in some way, shape, or if you really want to help them, you take them and go do something engaging. Go, you know, do something that would be fun that they would enjoy, whether that's going to a concert or a book reading or whatever it might be. It's something different. And you know, that way
it's like a redirective tool too.
Yeah,
you know, redirect them, get them in a different environment so you can take care of the responsibilities
more than
and
anything,
get them,
you know,
get them,
and so, but if so, the next question I always get after this is, well, how do I do that? You know, what are the phrases and what, you know, what words should I use? And the thing that I have found, I call them compassionate stories. I've had people who are new to the dementia journey say, well, that's lying. And I was like, no, it's not. Is this a kind thing to do for your loved one? Yes. So it's compassionate stories. And you can say that you want a housekeeper for 3 months in a raffle. And so they're going to come over and clean mom's house once a week, and then you pay for it. And, you know, there's lots of ways to pay for this stuff. And that gets you down the path of the fact that, you know, the state coalitions on aging, agencies for aging, actually have caregiver grants and caregiver money, so that if you were worried about finances, you can, you know, be subsidized for that. There's ways of financing this kind of thing so that they are not doing it and you're not doing it, unless you enjoy that kind of thing. But that would be the way I would do it, is to, or one way we did it in the past, having a professional caregiver come in and help dad with medications, help mom with medications, you know, make sure that there's food, you know, light food prep done, was we said that it was a Christmas gift or a birthday gift. And that way they're more accepting of it, to say, look, we're just doing it for a month. We're not paying for it for the rest of your lives. You may, but the idea is to get them to try it. Just like you have a respite stay for memory care, you've got the 3-day staycation for independent living. Those are things that people need to try because they're new. So
Yep.
do you have any other magic phrases or words that you find work with family members and accepting help?
well, Yes, I mean it's the therapeutic fibbing. You said, compassionate stories. I call it therapeutic fibbing. It's really, the heart of this situation here is, and I keep looking at it, and it's removing that, and it's almost like a redirective tool, getting them in a different environment. And how do we do that so you don't have to, talk about the elephant in the room about how they can't do this, and that you're maybe, you know, you're discrediting their dignity at this point, and you're not trying to, but to them it is. So, like, for example, I'll give you an example. It says here, my mom's my mom is not able to pay for their own bills at this point. Well, that to me tells me that her dementia is getting to the point where, it's beyond that. So now we know mom cannot take care of bills anymore. This happened to my grandmother. She always did her finances, always did her bills, and she was standing in her office and she was screaming at the checkbook, and she's got her calculator, and she says, I just can't figure this out anymore. I just can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. And she was slamming her hands down. And I said, you know what? I said, the Rockford Files are on. It's our favorite show to watch together. And I said, let's go watch that. And so I redirected her into the living room, and I told my aunt, I said, now is the time where you have got to start taking over the finances, and just letting mom know that, it's all taken care of, and if you have to come up with fibs, that's okay. Come up with a fib, because it's allowing them to not have as much anxiety. And if you can give them that peaceful, calming sense of relief and not feel that anxiety, it's a win-win for both of you.
Right. It's all about reassurance, right?
Become a storyteller. I mean, think up anything. It's how to redirect and say, I love you won 3 months worth of, I'm using that one. You got 3 months of housekeeping, I mean, they're coming in and, hey, it's all paid for. Or if they're stressed about, I can't pay for this, that, if you're moving to an assisted living and maybe they know how much the cost is for whatever reason, the VA will pay for it. If your loved one was a veteran, come up with therapeutic fibs to help them not be stressed out about it. It's redirect, deflect, and fib.
Yeah. See, I don't like the word fib, because
I know.
I honestly, I don't see it as a fib is another way to say lie. And
I know.
This is just a conversation you and I are having, but to me, it really, they're stories, right?
Therapeutic phrases. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with them. See, to me, a lie or a fib is deceiving. You're deceiving them. And deceit has a negative connotation, right? So you're lying to them to increase your status, or to further your well-being, or further something in your life. And that's not the case. It's actually just the opposite. You're doing it to increase their quality of life, right? Yeah. So that's just something.
So compassionate stories, is that what you call it? Yeah. I love that. Then I'm taking out the fib, and I'm going compassionate compassionate stories.
That's right. Thank you. See, this is
all
about exchange and learning, and because we on these journeys, we all learn something. So I'm going to ask you this next question. What should someone be looking for in memory care? We touched on this in a previous question, but if you were putting your loved one in a memory care community, what would you be looking for first?
Well, first of all, I would be looking for a lot of what you said is cleanliness. I want to see what the residents look like. I want to make sure that, there is ample care, that they have good feedback from their care, their reviews. I would be going to reviews, checking that stuff out. And asking to talk to other family members, and also, yes, for sure, making sure there's no odor. Now, I will tell you, working in a memory care community all the time, full time, there are residents that are incontinent, and that is a fact. And they become fully incontinent as their journey goes. So a lot of our residents are incontinent, and there are times where there might be a situation where there is an odor, but it shouldn't be there all the time. So odor is a huge thing. Cleanliness, and staff capabilities. How competent is the staff, and how experienced are they?
You judge that if you were a family member coming in, because most people have never stepped inside of a memory care. They've never talked to a professional caregiver. What qualities are they looking for?
The quality I'm looking for is love and compassion. Love
Yeah.
and compassion. Are you going to love my husband? Are you going to love on my dad? That's the biggest thing for me. And you know, loving someone, you know, making sure that the staff are loving and that they care and they seem compassionate. You know, I mean, we don't know until we get behind the doors and when they're moved in how it's really going to go. But I think, you know, transparency and also over communication. You know, me as a family member and as a spouse, I'm going to be totally, you know, wanting to know what's going on in transparency and want over communication.
Mhm. Yep. And I think to that point, and something that that I required is
Yes.
I would meet with the executive director
Yeah.
at least probably once a month. Most places say
Yeah.
once a quarter to review the plan of care.
Mm-hmm.
But if something was bothering me, I'd schedule a time and say, hey, I need to talk with
I gotta
you. And
come in and talk to you.
usually I didn't even have to schedule a time. I'd be like, hey, can I talk to you? And she'd be like, sure, come on in and let's sit down and talk. And she would be very attentive and listening. You're looking for an executive director who pays attention to what you're saying and then doesn't say, I'll get back to you unless it's something really complicated, but instead says, I understand where you're coming from. And what would make you feel better? What would make you give you peace of mind? And I think that's something that most people who are thinking about placing someone in memory care don't understand, that everyone from the person running and responsible for everything, the executive director to the director of nursing to the person who answers the phones, they're all your support team. And you should never feel like you're interrupting them. I mean, with certain, if they're picking up the phone, obviously you don't want to say, hey, but knowing that you can stop that person and say, mom's not looking quite right. Can I look at her weight scale? See what her weight's been looking like? I've had to buy her new pants and I'm worried that she's losing weight too fast and I want to understand why. And it's like, all right, here's her binder. And, let's take a look at what her weights are, and see what we're seeing. And this is your loved one. You absolutely have the right to ask that question at any point in time. If anyone makes you feel guilty or out of place or in any way, shape, or form, you should go to the top of the food chain to the executive director and let them know. Look, I felt like I was inconveniencing Susie when I asked for mom's weights. And those are the things that I looked for, was more, because I have a corporate background, the infrastructure that supports the family member. And so, that's
having relationship.
Yeah.
Having a relationship. I mean, I think, and I love that you and Stephanie's amazing. I mean, we are so lucky to have Stephanie. She is, if I could clone her, oh my gosh.
Oh,
but
yeah.
But she, when I was an executive director for a couple years, family members were most important. I drop everything for the family member. Come into my office, talk to me,
You
tell me
still
your
do that.
concerns. Still, yes, I do. Because I would want that for me.
Yeah.
And they deserve to be heard and valid and listen, validated. They just want to be heard. And we're going to make mistakes, and we do. But I tell you what, when you make a mistake, when you have a relationship, which versus not having a relationship, is, it's not good when you don't have a relationship. So knowing that we're both, that we're going to fail as operators on our end, but we're going to work through it and do what's best and correct it the best we can.
And I think that's a clue for family members too, that when something goes wrong, and this is just life, people, this isn't oh my God, things go wrong in memory care. Well, they go wrong in independent living and assisted living too. This is a company.
They go wrong in business.
It's process, it's people. You put all those P's together and you end up with pea soup. And so you have to be able to be patient, have calm conversations to say, hey, I've observed this. It's not what I expect. Therefore, are you able to, is that your expectation of your people or whatever happened? And then how do we get more towards my expectation of care or resolving this issue versus what happened? And, good executive directors, and I have a PDF if you guys are interested. It's what questions do you ask a memory care community before choosing one? And one of the questions is talking to the executive director and saying, okay, let's say we have a problem. You pick your favorite problem that something happened. And from there, how would you resolve it? How would you work with me to resolve it? And it's a very good question. And as far as finding out how the operations are going to run once your loved one is there, because expectation management is huge in any business. This is no different. If matter of fact, it's probably even more important, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I don't know what number we're on. I think we're on 6 about feeling guilty. Do you want to read that one?
I've got 7. I seem to move between feeling guilty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, I seem to move between feeling guilty that I can't help my parents more and feeling resentful of them that they want me to be more involved with their care. So that's that, how do I manage those feelings?
Yeah. So this is
Very
another
normal.
one that I get. And our favorite one is guilt, right? I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many people say, well, I have Jewish guilt, I have Catholic guilt. And I'm like, just throw whatever acronym or a descriptor you want in front of it, because it's just guilt.
Yeah.
And the guilt comes from us. It doesn't come from your loved one. Your loved one would be appalled that you feel guilty. And the guilt comes from the fact that we have an expectation of ourselves and we're not fulfilling it. So I want to be super daughter. I want to be there every day. I want to hang out with my mom 8 hours a day. That is so not true. And it's like I went twice a week for an hour and a half to 2 hours max. And I felt guilty about that. And it was because I set those parameters. I set what perfect looked like. So the first piece of advice I would have is reevaluate your expectations. Ask yourself why you expect yourself to do something that probably is going to make you miserable. And oh, by the way, it can even inhibit your loved one's experience in, say, memory care. Because, and you can talk to this too, is that they need to integrate with their people, as I mentioned earlier, with their cohort. They need to trust the people. They need to interact with them. They don't need you around. And I can't tell you how many husbands come in and stay the day with their wife. And the wife has no friends. When he leaves, she's all alone because he isolated her and is always there. So that to me is it's him feeling guilty that this is what he's supposed to do. So listen to yourself when you think about supposed to, should, because those come from expectations. Reevaluate your expectations of yourself. Now, resentment, there's another good one. I would go and I would feel resentment. Even when I visited when my dad was alive too, I'd be like, oh, I have to. If you hear that word, those words have to, I have to visit my parents. So I'll see you later and we'll go do something fun. But it's like, I don't want to go. That's not fun. This is my weekend. Why would I spend my weekend at assisted living, which is where they were at the time. And but it's my parents. I really should. And you go through this roller coaster while you're driving there. And then you're just it's like, all right, when I walk through that door, what do I want to be? Who do I want to be when I walk through that door for my parents? Because my mother was extremely perceptive. And if I walked in grumpy or just resentful, she would know. And she would, if she could have, escorted me out the door and said, you do not want to be here. We don't need you here. So leave and go do something fun. And so that resentfulness goes back to, we resent the fact that we feel like we should do something. And it goes back to expectations, right? So what about you? What are your thoughts on because your dad was, living far away from where you live when he got sick. So
yeah, the guilt part is it's a double-edged sword for sure, but it's what I always would stem back to and know that my dad and I had such a great relationship. He would not want me to feel that way. So, I would always just remind myself, okay, I know he's telling me, don't you don't have to come and see me every day. You don't have to come and see me 3 or 4 times a week. You know, if you come once a week, if you want to, you come when you want, it's okay. Because sometimes and when you are feeling guilty and you're not at your best emotional side, they feel that bad energy.
Absolutely.
They
Yeah.
know. And so,
Even with,
just,
if you have a late stage Alzheimer's, my mom would pat me on the
yes,
hand and be like, you should not be here. I could
well,
just,
you,
I
yeah,
could sense it. Yeah, they knew,
they
and
know.
yeah, dad was pretty oblivious, but mom was keyed into it.
I mean, animals, I mean, they do talk, but they
Yeah,
don't talk
yeah,
English, but
right.
they know. I mean,
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean?
it's true.
So they know the
Yeah,
bad energy that's coming in. So, if you are in a bad place and you are feeling guilty and you're feeling resentful, don't go.
yeah, I totally
Don't
agree with you
go.
100%.
Don't
And I've
go
done
that
that.
day.
I
You know?
have done that. I've been like, all right, I am just not in a good headspace for this. So, and she
Yep.
doesn't know, I mean, that's the other thing is they don't usually, when they've lost their temporal capability of keeping track of time, part of that is because they don't have a schedule or anything like that. But, they're not going to notice that you didn't come on Tuesday, but you came on Wednesday. They really aren't. So,
Correct.
yeah,
Yes. And we
yeah.
had for example, I just had a son move his mother into our Mesa property yesterday. Super nice son, but he's struggling really bad. And I see mom coming down the hallway. She just moved in yesterday and she said, all I want to do is just live with my son. I can't believe my son is not taking me home with him. And I said, you know what? We're going to go down and have dinner. And I'm going to introduce you to my girlfriend, Susie. And would you mind if I stay and sit with you? And first she's kind of like, no, I don't want you here. And I said, well, that's okay, but I'm going to go ahead and take you on down here. And I said, and your son's going to come and join you. But first of all, I got to go get him. So let's take you down to the dining room. Then I went and talked to the son and he's just in tears. And,
Oh,
and the thing is I had to explain to him, and this happens so more often than not, the ones they love the most, and I can totally tell this is a really close mother and son relationship, which most are. And I said, your mom is going to put a guilt trip on you like none other. So just, we got to be prepared for it. And, you coming to visit every day is not going to be good for you during this transition. So let's get mom settled in here for the, several weeks. Let's get her in some activities and engagement and some friends and things, get her a life going on here. And then we can start implementing you. You can come every day, but it's not going to be good for your mental health. So let's
and
get
the
her
flip
on
side of it
things.
is him visiting every day backtracks her. So she may
Yes.
be making progress in 24 hours. He shows up and she goes back to day one. It's like Groundhog Day. He shows up the
Yeah.
next day, she goes back to day one. She
Right.
needs the time to integrate and to build relationships. So you know me, I don't compare people with dementia with children, but I compare it to like anytime you separate, like painful memory. I went to summer school in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and my mom and I were really close. And I remember they said, okay, you go to the cafeteria and have lunch, and we're going to go home, right? 9 hours away. And this was the first time I'd ever been left at home, away from home. And I looked out the cafeteria window, and my mom had this is so sad, her hand on the window just to wave goodbye. And oh, that's interesting.
It's doing that.
The AI picked up on
AI
me
is coming
waving my
in.
hand. Oh,
Yes.
that's disturbing.
I know.
But weird. But she was waving goodbye. Apparently dad said, oh, she was sobbing. He's like, I drove a half-mile down the road, pulled over and said, do you want to go back and get her? And she said, no, she needs to do this and I need her to do it. So it's hard when we love someone so much. It's really hard to separate ourselves physically and mentally and emotionally. And you just have to, what's the phrase, put your big girl panties on, or put on your, do something to stand up and say, all right, this is the right thing. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what the analogy is for guys. But big boy, I guess. But you have to focus on the end result, the outcome, that this is better for them. And because that relationship was so close, I'm so glad that you told him that. It's like, look, it's best for her. And I actually emphasize it's best for her if you don't come. Because
Right.
otherwise,
Yes,
if you
it
say
is.
about, because he would throw himself under a bus for her. And
Yes.
so it's not good enough to say it's about him. It has to be about her and what's good for her. And ultimately, but you guys, you're going to be really smart because you attend these webinars. So
Yes.
you're
And we're
not
so glad you did. And Laura, I saw your mom today. I'm so glad you joined these. She was tootling around, visiting with other residents. She got quite a bit of exercise today on her walker. So it was fun to see her today.
That's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're at the top of the hour. We didn't
Yep.
get through all of our questions, so we'll have to do this again. I did ask in the chat if you would be interested in us doing a webinar dedicated to the dementia stages and the symptoms associated with it, because we get that question a lot. And then we have our August webinar. We have a guest speaker, right? You want to talk a bit about that?
Yes, our next webinar is going to be August 20th at 4 p.m. We did confirm that. We have Dr. John Baca. He's actually a chiropractor, but he works for Triad Pain Management, but he is probably one of the most smartest physicians, chiropractors I've ever met. He is very well entrenched with brain health, inflammation. He's going to be talking about basically the relation of hearing and dementia, and also diabetes and dementia. So those two different things that are associated with dementia, and just kind of some of the problem solving that can be done, and some of the the statistics and what's going on with those two things with dementia these days. So Dr. John Baca, and you'll love him. He's vibrant, gregarious, great personality, and you can ask him any questions you want. So we're excited to have him on August 20th.
Absolutely. And you guys, there's some statistics that are really important. If you have a loved one with hearing loss, that due to the lack of stimulation of them not being able to hear, their brain starts to shut down. With diabetes, blood sugar actually crosses the blood-brain barrier. And I read a recent statistic that people with diabetes have a 60% higher likelihood of getting dementia. So it's really, if it's untreated, that's a problem. And so we need to make sure that we build as much awareness as possible, both with you and for you to spread the word to let people know. So thank you so much for joining. We appreciate you. And we look forward to seeing you on August 20th. And you'll see emails from me inviting you to join. So look forward to you all joining us. And those on the recording, thank you for watching.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Take care.